Welcome back to Objective 6 of Chapter 2 in our 3B1 series, and this will be the last objective for this chapter, in which we'll describe typical designs, components and operating strategies for waste heat and biomass boilers. So biomass as a fuel is basically anything that used to be alive. So classic examples are things like hog fuel in the logging or timber industries. And these are things like the sawdust, the wood chips and the bark that's stripped off of the logs themselves. From agricultural industries, things around here that can be often used are oat hulls, corn husks, things like coffee grounds, grass, leaves, sugar cane, biogas that they use a lot in Australia. All of these types of things can be burned. Now again, biomass can be a useful tool to not only supplement our fuel, but can also massively reduce our costs of purchasing that fuel. The only real problem with biomass, of course, is using it as a waste product, is that it can often contain large amounts of moisture and also has a fairly low calorific value. So a great deal of it must be burned, and also it can often be seasonal in that it's not available all year round and we have to store large amounts of it to get us through the off season. So these biomass burners are basically ways in which we can combust this material in order for it to release the heat that we need to generate our steam. Now, the systems that we'll take a look at, there'll be 4 of them, and these are focused mainly on the furnaces of these boilers. We'll take a look at a separate furnace, which is called a Dutch oven. Yes, I've heard all the jokes before regarding Dutch ovens, so hold it. Next one, a pinhole grate. Third, a travelling grate, and 4, a vibrating grate, and we'll also take a look at a variation upon a theme there called a hydro grate. Okay, so the first one is the funny one up called the Dutch oven. Not that kind of Dutch oven. Okay, a Dutch oven is a refractory walled cell connected to a conventional furnace. Now, it's best to see these with a diagram that we can see from figure 31 in our textbook. We basically have refractory line cells that are attached to the side of our furnace. The hog fuel will be entered through a hopper that will enter through the top of the furnace, will then drop onto the floor, and now it will combust on a pile. Now, the bottom of the floor of the Dutch ovens are slightly slanted in towards the main radiant section of the furnace. So as it burns, it will then slip down into the bottom of the main furnace, where it will then be removed from the bottom of that furnace as ash. One of the big disadvantages of a Dutch oven furnace and this kind of arrangement is that the ash has to be manually raked at the bottom of the furnace. So there are doors along the side of the bottom of the furnace that have to be opened, and then an operator, such as yourselves, has to wear the big mask, the big leather apron, put the big gauntlets on, and grab this great big long-handled rake and insert the rake into the furnace and literally rake it down to a sort of a more level, and also rake out those ashes. And it can be a very difficult, very nasty, very hot job to do. And that's the big disadvantage with this furnace. Now, here is the diagram that I alluded to earlier on figure 31 of page 28 in your textbook. And you can see here the Dutch ovens attached to the side of the furnace with these hog fuel feeders above them. So the hog fuel will be dropped into the top, and hog fuel is comprised of things like wood chips, sawdust, and the bark that's stripped off in the debarking area of our plant, and that's all going to be dumped in there. Auxiliary burners can be contained in the furnace, and these will typically be burning natural gas or fuel oil or something like this. And these, of course, can be used to supplement the burn of your boiler, or of course could be used when there is no hog fuel available. The bottom of the furnace, you can see, is where the ash is then going to be removed. As we move up the furnace through the radiant section and over the nose of the furnace, we then pass into our convective section, where the evaporator section of our boiler is located. And you can see here the steam drum located top right, the mud drum below it, and then the risers on the inside of that tube bank, and the downcomers on the outside of that tube bank. We can also see here as well, there is an integral economizer that's in this boiler as well as all of those other typical heat exchanger devices we see to increase efficiency, such as air preheaters and economizers. And you can get a sense of the size of this thing as there is a picture of a fairly standard size man there, bottom right of the diagram. The average height for a male is about 5'9", so you can get a sense there of how big this thing is. And we're probably talking maybe around 48, 50 meters tall. So a very large boiler here that's going to be producing high pressure, typically superheated steam that's going to then drive a turbine to produce electricity for use of the plant. Okay, the next one to talk about is a pinhole grate. A pinhole grate is basically a water-cooled grate that is clamped to the floor of the furnace, and it uses yet another application for our Venturi principle. Now, you should remember the Venturi principle as it's basically a constriction within a pipe that causes an increase in velocity that causes a reduction in pressure. That's the whole idea of Venturi with an application of Bernoulli's theorem. Now, with regards to these Venturi type holes, they end up creating what's known as a semi-suspension to burn these finer particles, which in other words means we get a better intimate mixing of our air and the fuel on the bottom of the furnace floor, so we get a more complete and even burn. It also turns the fuel particles over, so the light particles move to the top and the heavier particles move to the bottom so that they can combust. Unfortunately, the ash in this type of furnace has to be removed in the same way as the Dutch oven. That is, by opening the side doors at intermittent times along the bottom of the furnace, inserting the rakes, and then manually raking it out. Again, a bit of a nightmare job there. Low maintenance and little refractory is required in a pinhole grate furnace, and of course it is why they're popular. The water-cooled grate, of course, is just going to increase our heat transfer surface area, thereby increasing the efficiency of our steam generator. So here's an example of a pinhole grate stoker. You can see it's somewhat similar to the last one. Of course, it just doesn't have the Dutch ovens clamped on the side of it. All of the other auxiliaries to this steam generator are going to be the same, i.e. your forced and your induced draft fans, giving us balanced draft. And you would also see off of the diagram, of course, things like your superheaters, your evaporator section, economizer, air preheater, etc. This diagram, however, also shows you your mechanical dust collector to remove things like fly ash and particulate matter, and then of course you can also see the beginnings of the uptake on the outlet of the induced draft fan that would go up and out to the stack. In the actual furnace of this diagram, we can also see overfire air ports, and this is just our tertiary air that's going to be entered into the furnace to aid in the complete combustion. Of course, we'll have primary, secondary, and our tertiary air. The primary air is mixed with the fuel, the secondary air enters at or just above the fuel level, and then our overfire air, this will be our tertiary air. The next one to discuss is a travelling grate stoker, and these can also be referred to as a chain grate stoker or a bar grate stoker. Now these are just an improvement over the pinhole grate in that now the grate is going to be continuously moving as it's driven by an electric motor with a chain and a sprocket. And now this overcomes the disadvantages of what we spoke about for the pinhole grate stoker and our Dutch oven. That is, we do not require now to manually rake out the furnace due to the chain being slowly moving. And it's only going to move at very slow speeds, typically about 5 millimeters per second, but of course that's going to depend upon the combustion time required to completely combust the fuel. Either or, by the time the fuel reaches the end of our chain grate stoker, it's then going to drop off into the ash system and it will then be simply removed. Now, the air itself for the combustion air is going to be coming up and through our chain grate, and approximately 60 to 85% of all of the air required is going to enter from below the grate in the furnace. The remainder is going to come in at the fuel level for secondary air and above the fuel level for tertiary air. Now, the idea of the travelling grate, chain or bar grate stoker is the same as what you discussed back in 4th class when you looked at coal-fired furnaces. Now, because this has moving components, of course, with our chains, our sprockets and our drivers and things of that nature, it will of course have increased cost and increased maintenance with regards to the operation of this particular stoker. Now, the best diagram that I can show you to convey this idea is one taken out of your 4th class textbooks in the 4A. Now, this diagram is showing coal, for example, that's being burned. However, the furnace arrangement is the same as if there was biomass above it. So we can see here there is a drive sprocket that is going to drive the chain as it will rotate or pass very slowly, approximately 5 millimeters per second, and by the time it reaches the right hand side by the idling sprocket, our fuel will have completely combusted and it will then be dropped off into the ash pit for removal and burial in landfill later. Now you can see the fuel is being spread apart on the chain grate by the fuel hopper, and then there'll also be typically a ram there to drive it in as well. The air will be entering in below our furnace, 60 to 85%, with our remaining air being either above or at the fuel level. Now again, you can see here that the furnace is constructed in a similar way to what we saw before with regarding furnace arches. The furnace arch is this roof section here and here that's going to then redirect the heat back onto the fuel bed to help improve our combustion. As the combustion gases are then released, they'll travel up into the radiant section and over into the convective section, which is where our evaporator will be located. Here's a photograph then of what a typical sort of chain grate stoker is going to look like. So again, I apologise for the big web sort of advertisement address across the centre of the photograph, but this is the best one that I could find. You can also see here there are some rakes shown on this photograph as well if they are required for a furnace application. They wouldn't be required for the application that we're using, but when we talk about a rake, I don't mean a garden rake. I mean one specific for the job for raking out a furnace. Okay, the next one is a vibrating grate. This is another improvement over the travelling grate stoker. Now, we mentioned that some disadvantages of the travelling grate stoker was that it had a lot of moving parts with regards to the chain, the sprockets, the driver, the electric motor, etc., etc., and that has increased maintenance. The vibrating grate is an angled grate where the fuel is going to be put on, and then intermittently controlled by a timer, this grate is going to shake through a series of those rams you can see at the right hand side of my photograph. Now these have much less moving parts that's going to move a lot less distance, so it will have reduced maintenance than the travelling grate. And the beauty with the vibrating grate stoker is, as it is shaken, the level of the fuel will then sort of level itself out, so we get better complete combustion. So that's a real big advantage with this. Vibrating grate stokers can either be air-cooled or water-cooled. Depends upon the arrangement of the furnace. If they are water-cooled, it means that the bottom of the grate has water tubes running through it to keep it cool, thereby increasing our heat transfer surface area. Now here is a diagram in your textbook on figure 33 of what a typical vibrating grate stoker would look like. And again, you can once again see that the bottom of the furnace is slightly angled to assist us in removing the ash as it vibrates out. And you can also see the furnace arch here above the furnace as I showed you in that last diagram. We can also see that once again we have auxiliary burners further up in the furnace for the same reasons as what we discussed earlier. The air entering the furnace for our primary air is going to enter underneath our furnace grate, just the same as it was in the previous example of our pinhole grate. Now, a variation upon a theme for these grates is that they can either be air or water cooled. If they are water cooled, so we could have a water cooled pinhole grate stoker or a water cooled vibrating grate stoker, for example, then they are referred to as hydro grates. And you can see a cutaway section here in figure 34 of your textbook that I've got pictured bottom right on my slide. These are simply water tubes embedded into the bottom of the furnace. Now these of course are going to have no moving parts in regards to the tubes. They'll be made from heat resistant material mounted in heat resistant castings, and they're just going to help us keep it cool and also improve the heat transfer surface area of the boiler, thereby raising our overall capacity of that boiler. And these are typically found in biomass burners. Okay, that's it for a fairly short objective 6 there. Let's take a look at some typical sort of multiple choice questions that you could be likely asked for this objective. So first, in the Dutch oven furnace, is A, hog fuel is added to the top and burns on the floor, B, ash is removed by a travelling grate, C, the furnace doesn't require refractory, or D, the water tubes are tangent tube. Well, hopefully you remember the diagram for this one. Hog fuel is added through the hoppers into the top of the furnace, where it then drops onto the bottom of a refractory lined cell and then burns on the floor until it's reduced down to ash, and then it's manually raked to remove. Next one. In the travelling grate furnace, something to something percent of the air is fed from below the grates. Is this 50 to 100, 60 to 85, 65 to 80, 70 to 90? So typical sort of question, this memorising our sort of fact stroke figure. Hopefully you remember it is 60 to 85. So answer B for that one. Next question. Vibrating grate stokers that contain water-cooled tubes are often referred to as what? Are these aqua grate stokers, membrane wall stokers, tangent tube, or hydro grate stokers? Hopefully that's a fairly easy question. Water, hydro, answer, hydro grate stokers. Next one. Which of the following furnaces use Venturi type holes to admit air to the burning material on the grate? Is that the Dutch oven, the pinhole grate, the travelling grate, or is it the vibrating grate? The idea behind this one is that the Venturi holes are what keep our fuel in semi-suspension and turn over the fuel, so the heavy particles move to the bottom and the light particles move to the top. And that is found in our pinhole grate stoker. Next one. Which of the following fuels is an example of biomass? Is it natural gas, car or truck tyres, hog fuel, or stoker coal? Basically, you're looking for one of those fuels that used to be alive, and that is hog fuel. Hog fuel is a mixture of wood chips, bark, sawdust, etc. that we get from the logging industry and is a byproduct of things like the paper pulp industry from something like the craft process, for example. That's a classic location in sort of industry where you're going to find hog fuel, even in places like sawmills as well. So answer, hog fuel. And there you go. There's the end of Objective 6, and with it, that's the end of Chapter 2 of 3B1. Fascinating chapter, really, to look at the different types of boilers there are around for different specialised applications. By no means is this a complete exhaustive list. This is just sort of the beginning before you look at some others that you'll move on to in 2A3. If you're interested about other types of special boiler design, as well as the ones located in this chapter, then again I strongly encourage that you check out the Babcock & Wilcox Steam Boiler book, as it's a fantastic reference for all things boiler and boiler construction related. So, at the end of the chapter then, check out the end of chapter questions from your textbook that are found on page 32. Then, check out the D2L chapter quiz and the D2L chapter assignment to see the types of multiple choice questions you are likely to see on either your unit tests, midterm, final, and indeed provincial exam. So, hopefully you enjoyed that one. Take care, and I'll see you back for another chapter soon. All the best.